getting down to the business of the summit here, the big question, of course, was about Greenland and what's going to happen with this. We spoke last year about the real strategic importance of Greenland. Trump has announced that he has reached some sort of framework for a future deal with NATO. Have a look at this.
It's a deal that people jumped at. Really fantastic for the USA. Gets everything we wanted, including especially real national security and international security.
How so? Can you give us some details, please?
Well, the deal is going to be put out pretty soon, and we'll see. It's right now a little bit in progress, but pretty far along. It gets us everything we needed to get.
But even as we are speaking here, some of the players involved on the European side are still worried about sovereignty. Mick, is this the best outcome out of this deal? And is this really just that art of the deal thing where Trump takes a maximalist position, will take all of Greenland, and then comes to something much more reasonable?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the best possible deal, but it's certainly better than a military invasion of Greenland that would, end the NATO alliance. I'm not sure, James, yet what we got in the deal. Trump is famous for this, announcing a sort of the framework of a deal, MOU on a deal, sort of the outlines of a deal without having many details. That's about where we are right now. It's not readily apparent to me what the Americans got that they didn't have already. Again, we had fairly broad rights militarily to operate on Greenland under previous treaties. That we had talked to the Danes about helping them and us sort of jointly develop their rare earth minerals and so forth, all of which we get under this deal that Trump has sort of announced. As is so often the case with Trump, the devil will be in the details. But yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, what you've got is a situation where America can bolster the defenses of Greenland, bolster the defenses of the Arctic, help develop the critical minerals on the island, and didn't blow up the NATO alliance too badly on the road to doing that. So I guess that has to be seen as a success. I'm just not sure how different it was in the status quo ante.
I think you're probably right there, Mick. Hey, I want to move on to, though, another story, which I think has not gotten anywhere near enough attention. This is the new governor of Virginia. We remember that controversial race last year, Abigail Spanberger. She is pushing through all sorts of legislation about, let's have a look at one piece of legislation that she just signed.
And this executive order rescinds executive order number 47. State and local law enforcement should not be required to divert their limited resources to enforce federal civil immigration laws. It is a responsibility of federal law enforcement.
Mick, she's also, along with not cooperating with federal law enforcement on immigration, raising taxes, pushing a whole swag of other hard left agenda items. This really shows the consequences of elections and what's at stake in the midterms here, doesn't it?
But not just that, James. Keep in mind, Annabelle Spanberger, who served in Congress, and I'm familiar with her from her time there, ran for governor as a moderate, a down-the-center Democrat, and actually railed against some of the more far left-leaning policies of her party. But here she is in her first week, maybe her first day or two on the job, and is putting in some fairly progressive left-wing sort of policies. I think that is a wake-up call for both parties going into the midterms and to the voters that, just because someone runs as something doesn't mean they're going to vote or govern as another. And I think that the Spanberger situation we watch very, very closely as we go into the midterms, because there will be a lot of Democrats in swing districts, especially running under her playbook. And of course, now they're going to have to question, well, if you do win, will you govern as the type of person you ran as, or will you govern as the type of person that Annabelle Spanberger is governing as?
Well, Mick, one of the things that Spanberger ran as was kind of an anti-Zohran Mamdani character. But, in office now, she's proving to be this other thing, as you say. Does this show that the center of gravity of the party is now shifting further and further left?
Oh, sure. But you and I have talked about that for weeks now, ever since the Mamdani rise, even going back to the last election cycle when the influence of the progressive left, the Bernie Sanders, the AOC wing of the party. Spanberger ran explicitly against that. She was the one who said, look, I don't want my party going this far left. I want to be more of a centrist. She wants to run for president, and she doesn't think she can do so as a progressive. But yes, all of the energy in that party is on the far left. So even those folks who are running as centrists when they govern, are being forced to govern from the left. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. The Democrat Party hasn't figured out what they want to be yet going into the midterms. The Republicans, don't get me wrong, James, they've got their own issues, and we do.
Yeah.
But one of them is not the sort of the unified force of the Democrats, because they're just as screwed up as the Republicans are right now.
Well, Mick, this moving to the left business, so we saw another example of this, and I'm glad you mentioned this shift, because it was really disturbing that Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, he has released memoirs in which he says that and this guy's a very centrist, very moderate, very normal Democrat who also happens to be Jewish. He has released memoirs that say that when he was being vetted for Kamala Harris's potential vice president in 2024, they asked him, was he or had he ever been a double agent of Israel? This seems to be, well, it's an ancient canard, but also this really shows where these guys are, doesn't it?
It does, and I think it was an eye-opening. I give him credit for exposing it. Look, both parties are dealing with anti-Semitism in ways I never expected they would have to deal with in the 21st century. Republicans have got an issue with it. The Democrats certainly do, at the very highest level. Let's understand what this was. This was a vetting to be or not to be the Democrat nominee for vice president on the ticket with Kamala Harris. It doesn't get any higher than that in a party, than being vetted for vice president. And if that's one or some of the questions that her team or she was asking or curious about, it shows you just how deep this anti-Semitism runs in the Democrat Party. They are going to have to do something about it. They're going to have to address it. By the way, Josh Shapiro will be on the front line of that, because my expectation is that he will run for president in 2028 as well. So be curious to see how a Jewish Democrat does in a Democrat primary in this current environment.
Mick Mulvaney, it's a very sad state of affairs there on the left. Thank you so much, as always.
Thanks, James.